can think about three levels of organization in a cell in a human body. You have a molecular, very big things, molecules, cortisol, adrenaline, whatever you study in medicine. Then we have a quantistic, a statistics level, and it is the level where the colleague has, they have been working in this intermediate, where the aero are Boltzmann and thermodynamics and this sort of things. I will work in a lower level, that is the level of quantistic physical. I will call it quantum biology. Don't use the word physical, quantum physical, because physicists are used to work close to the zero temperature, minus 272, very isolated system, very closed system, and for many years physicists have been skeptical of our, I am a physician, I want to treat people, and she is a molecular biologist. We want to treat people, but physicists were very skeptical because they say you work in a cell, the cell is chaos, thermodynamic chaos, and being warm, being chaotic, there is no space for any kind of quantum physics into a biological system. And this was completely wrong. Now we are talking about open system, quantum biology. Open system is the word you have to underline because it's the key concept. I will go faster because I have a lot of idea to communicate, and mine is mainly a theoretical talk, but you will bring home a lot of keynotes that are important if you want to do research in this field. I started when I finished Liceo Scientifico, and you know the money is not much, I needed money. Unfortunately, 3 teachers in the Liceo were off for 1 year, so I was teaching physics, mathematics and philosophy. It was a great opportunity now that I think to it. Then I was in Milano, responsible of the research, and Policlinico di Milano is a very important teaching hospital in Italy. I was in scientific research, and my task was, can we do something to give a rational, give a scientific foundation to weak energies. You know, in this meeting, a lot of people are talking about acupuncture, homeopathy, thermal therapy, this sort of, they are, from the point of view of physics, they are weak energies. So what sense do these weak energies have in a serious scientific medicine? You will notice that I use the word scientific continuously because I think that the main problem today is that there are a lot of technology, a lot of people, they use the word quantistics, entanglement, these sort of things, but they have no serious physical and mathematical or scientific basis. And this is a great obstacle because the institution, the official institution are not going to fund your research if they think that you are, you know, selling clouds and illusions. So I am not going to be Proust. I start with the French now. I'm not Proust. I'm not going to think about my past. We think about the future. The times, they are changing. So take your pen and write. We are introducing 3 new concepts that are not mainstream yet, but they will be very soon as far as Giorgio and I will start to write something serious about it. The 3 concepts are these. These are 3 concepts that 5 years ago I've been teaching medicine for 50 years, but I never realized this shock. These 3 words are a shock. So take very seriously extended cell theory, population coding, and pattern relearning. These are the 3 key concepts to build a quantum molecular medicine as far as I understand it. So let's start with the first idea. I wrote a book on Rudolf Virchow, teaching medicine. You know that this German guy invented cellular theory. What does it mean? He said, the difference between the inorganic world and the living world is the cell. Omnia cellula e cellula. If you want to understand shock, you want to understand endothelium, whatever you want to start, you are dealing with a level of organization of matter that is radically different from inorganic world. Because the cell has been emerged by life history as an autoconservative, open system. What does it mean? It takes things from the environment and maintains itself during life, during when you sleep, when you are awake, and during the 24 hours, etc. Another problem that our friend has introduced is the problem of time. Medicine completely ignores the dimension of time. But if you want to do any kind of quantum therapy, you cannot imagine that you can administer a very weak, let's say, light or vibration or a sound or whatever. Before you start the treatment, you have to understand what is the state of the human being that you have in front of you. Because if he is sleeping, then the background is one. If it is after a lunch, is another background. But I will introduce another concept that is very new in neuroscience that will shock you and will shock the psychologists that are here present, because change everything we know. I will talk about we have two brains and two conscience, two way of working of the brain that are very fundamental. Just to forget night, that the night is a blues concept, I will call it, because it rotates between REM, non-REM, then it's playing blues all the night. So there are at least three situations that we cannot ignore, but are constantly ignored from the point of view of efficacy of therapy, whatever it is. What is the extended cell theory? Well, you say, you wrote a book about Rudolf Virchow that invented inflammation, invented pulmonary emboli, the word leukemia. You understand that I'm talking about such a great man. But I added the word extended, because until 3 years ago, I opened science and I had a shock, not an hemodynamic shock, but a psychic shock. Because on this number of science, they told me that they have done a census of neurons in the brain, and they discovered there are at least we use very rough methods, RNA, proteomics, that I consider very, very rough. We do what you know, that make a lot of sense. But the problem, the shock, what was the shock? The shock is this: new line, please, a new line, and then right from the beginning. The phrase is this: every individual cell in a human body has its proper history. There are not two neurons that are identical. Oh, but that is chaos. No, it's not chaos at all. Because the word that I introduced, that is population coding or pattern recognition, that's the way the brain works. So you have to forget that the brain is a photographic machine, is a camera, the brain is not a copy of reality. The brain builds a new reality from bottom up. And another concept that we have to bring home is this word, bottom up. What means bottom up? It means that when you are administering a very weak energy at a very low level of organization of living bodies, forget about cold, physics and the stone, we are interested in people, okay? Living people. When you talk about an organism, you have to start from the bottom up, and you have and this is very simple. What are the stimuli that are upon which all the reality of living things are built? There are, one, and that is very surprising, the magnetic field of the Earth, and then we know today that the mitochondria need the magnetic field of the Earth, otherwise the electrons get crazy. I'm not going, there are two radicals, and there is very tricky, but forget about it. Remember that if there is no magnetic field, some quantum phenomena in mitochondria, and you will discover that mitochondria are the hero of my talk, because they are the center of the center in a cell. Because in a cell, another concept, I am going to split everything. The cell, there are two cells. There is the big cell, but inside the big cell, there are many other cells that are the mitochondria. And if you know a little bit the story of living things, mitochondria were cells, but then they were engulfed into the big cell. So we have different number of mitochondria in each cell. And if the mitochondria is the nuclear center of the cell, then you have to realize that the probability of surviving depends on how many mitochondria you have, how well they work, and if you are able to fine-tune the mitochondria. He talked about, they moved to a level that we can call nanotechnology or nanopharmacology. One approach is that you get this melanocortin, or you get FAD, you know some biology, FAD, FAD, NAD, NADH, the redox equilibrium. They were working on this melanocortin, and this strategically is a very clever approach, because we know today that the melanocortin, all this huge family of protein are interesting because they are exquisitely sensitive to light stimulation. And my suggestion this morning is that we can build we need to build one very precise technology to give light, sound, magnetic field, thermic stimuli in a very narrow, precise range, because the melanocortin will be very happy. Instead of giving a melanocortin, you know what I'm thinking? You have your melanocortin. What I do is fine-tune your melanocortin. It's the same thing, but approach to two levels that are complementary, is nothing fun. And today, a lot of people in America are taking NAD, or they take metformin, or they take resveratrol, or they take sirtuin. There is a crazy man in Harvard that talks about sirtuin, but he doesn't understand that starting from light is very easier. So I will start from the very bottom. When quantum physics started at the beginning of the 19th century, there were two schools. One school was the Copenhagen school, and the slide of my friend were all about the Copenhagen school, that is the statistic thermodynamic level of organization of matter. But my fan are Albert Einstein, Richard Feynman, because I think I am a deterministic. I think Schrödinger. I think that the reason we use statistics is, I taught statistics for 40 years, I learned statistics in Harvard, in London, forget about it. I know what I'm talking about. We introduce statistics when we do not know precisely what is going on a biological, biophysical level. Today, we are so close to know exactly why I am talking about exactly. Exactly because there is the extended cell theory. If each cell responds in a very specific, precise, mathematical way to a length of light, and all the metabolism is going from this bottom up to be modified by that, then you treat people with very precise, mathematically precise. It's like a bisturi, it's like a laser, you know, it's a ground level theory. And these people, like psychologists and people like acupuncturists, they will not say, oh, Beppe, they don't say hello anymore. The reason is that if you start from the top and start to modify, to cure people top down, you have a lot of symptomatic effects, beautiful symptoms. I'm not saying that cognitive psychotherapy or whatever doesn't work. I think if this house, there is an earthquake, and this house gets broken from the ground, you can repair the floor and say, okay, it's not raining. I no doubt it's not raining, but you are not repairing the building from the very beginning. And different from shock, in London I was treating people with too young to die, people in Belfast, this sort of thing, and we cure ARDS, hemodynamic. But one thing is immediate survival. But if you have a person that is 20 years old, I am not only concerned with immediate survival, I would be more ambitious and say, I want to rebuild the building if possible from the very ground level. That's why I talk about this population coding. And now I will talk about what is population coding. Then, as you see, the brain, what is the brain? Population coding. Trillion of neurons that are different from one from the other. That's why I want a very specific light, a very specific, I am using my synthesizer, musical synthesizer, to produce, for instance, 40 Hz pulse, and we know the 40 Hz pulse, regular for 45 minutes, delay Alzheimer's disease, and pulse at 30 Hz that can modify Parkinson's disease. So I am moving from the ground of biology. Quantum biology is the ground of biology, and it's not anything esoterical. We do not have any cat that is Schrödinger cat. We do not have mystery. No mystery whatsoever. Cat is living, is eating faithfully. Is all okay. Now for the French. I will approach in France very soon. Population coding. I will show you something that get you the idea of what I mean when I say population coding. Population coding is very safe. All in artificial intelligence is population coding. 10 years ago, we were believed that in your brain you have a cell, a super arrow, a super cell, that is your grandmother. There is the grandmother cell. We were convinced that there are very clever, very individualistic that represent the world. It's nothing at all like that. Your grandmother is represented by a lot of spike. You know the code when you go to the supermarket, there is this barcode. The brain uses barcodes, so it's not exact, but almost. The brain uses barcodes. If you are a very clever, very experienced physician, you see a patient there and you say, oh, this patient is very serious. Oh, this one you can wait. And how do you know in 2 seconds that this patient is very sick? Because you recognize a pattern. And you don't know what is this pattern, because it's not the kind of thing that you can teach in a university. It's not what we call declarative knowledge. Declarative knowledge say, you know, in the infarct you have CK is high, and you have necrosis, and you can see this and this. No. The recognition of the severity of a people is a pattern recognition. But Hippocrates said the catastasis, when describing epidemics, he said, you know, the wine is like that, the temperature like that, the town is built like that, therefore the epidemic is like that. It's pattern recognition all the way through, and in Italiano can be l'impronta. When you recognize an animal by looking at the impronta, the printing on the ground, then you don't need to see all. It's enough that you see from here to there, and you are a hunter, you said, oh, you know, this is a bear. No doubt it's a bear, you know? So the concept of pattern, and this is very robust, because if I am in a battlefield and half of my cells are damaged, I still survive because the other half is still able to build the pattern that classify life. And in a book that I'm writing, I wrote this phrase, chronic disease are a disease of pattern of population coding. And very weak energy can restore in part or completely this pattern that is the secret of life. And this is very interesting because deep learning in ChatGPT, Claire, this sort, is made on the same principle. Knowledge is not, I say in another way, knowledge in a living thing is not localized somewhere. We are used to think, you know, Surenal. He introduced a very interesting concept that I used to teach diabetes. What is the organ of diabetes? There is no organ in diabetes. It's the endothelial of the vascular system, the organ of diabetes, because you get retinopathy, nephropathy, whatever, because the cell of the endothelium, but not one cell. Each cell has its life. Each cell responds to nitric oxide, insulin, whatever it is, and you can modulate. What is interesting is that you move on the ground, then I show you, okay? Another thing that is interesting is this. The brain is not a mirror of nature, you know already. The brain builds reality. There is another reality. And it was The people who discovered this were the painter in France, and I arrive in France now. They were in France because photography would say, oh, now there is photography, we don't gain any money anymore, you know. What are we doing? If photography is taking picture of reality, what does a painter do? And I will tell you, they were very clever, they anticipated neuroscience for 100 years. Another concept that you have to bring home, you can start a new line, as I say to my students, start a new line and write down this one. In the brain, we are two brains. Bring home this idea, we are two brains, no one brain. Then these two brains, one brain is the brain that is, I am going to classify knowledge using the classification of memory and of neuroscience. You have one brain that is biological brain, call it biological. When you are born, you don't know anything. You don't know that Paris is the capital of France, you don't know Rome, the Colosseum. You will not, but you may learn how to reach this place, starting from the entrance. Because the child is learning things using the stimuli from the environment. So you learn from the environment, and you have Piaget, etc., etc., etc. When you are 3 years, 4, 5 years, you go to school, and then you learn declarative knowledge. Be careful. Declarative knowledge is completely artificial, is made by humans. We are in this place, and you will remember Occam, the nominalist debate in the Middle Age about Trinity. Then the debate about the universal was, does the universal exist or not? And you know, Duns Scoto, Occam, and these great theologists and philosophers. What was the problem? The problem is this. DSM-5, the classification of disease that you use, is built by men, okay? But in 5 minutes I will show you that the brain is able to classify people that are diseased using sense and perception of the world. So there is one classification that is non-declarative, non-based on language, non-based on universal, but based on the experience. The concept of experience for a children learning is key. That's why you have to play, and then at school don't bore children with a lot of notion, leave them play and go around and play with themselves and this sort of thing. So we have two brains. But in this 21st century, what is emerging is that people lie. Trump lies continuously, the media lies, the school lies, the teacher lies. So the problem is that why this brain is reliable, because it is a biological brain, and children, very little children, they are very egoistic, very self-concerned, but they don't lie. And then the painter said, painting is a form of science, Leonardo, Impressionist, Degas, whatever. Art is a science because art don't lie, while the world lies. But this is a disaster for our culture. I am introducing a breaking. But it's not enough. To make things even worse, what happened is that neuroscientists discovered that we have really two brains. We were convinced, one idea, a naive idea, people working in imaging, they think the brain is doing nothing, then you receive a stimuli, the brain starts. It's absolutely wrong. The brain is always living, but when you do routine that is, you know, you go with your car to the office that you go every day, that's routine, work in one way, that is default mode network. But then, Sherlock Holmes, something doesn't work, you don't find this aula, and you are intrigued by what I'm saying, then you activate another brain that is called task positive brain. Why I introduce this? Because if I want to do some kind of therapy based on energy bottom-up, is fundamental that in the protocol I understand if the patient is in a routine kind of, let's say, energetic environment, or it is, and you see, here is, when people apply guidelines and repeat everything that has already been done, you activate this area of the brain, and they have one kind of quantum energy and whatever. But when you are puzzled by something, you know, I don't find the room. Why this thing is there? It should not be there. Why Sherlock Elementary? You know. And then it's completely different, because then the brain is working in a complete different level. So before we apply any kind of quantum therapy, you have to be careful if the patient is in the default mode network, in task positive network, or sleeping. This is time, the 4 dimension in Einstein, etc., applied to my problem. It's getting very late. I don't want to go on very much, but now for the French that are here, they will be very pleased. Picture, painting, post-impressionist, understand all these 100 years before neuroscience. You know, this is a painting of Sarah. What is interesting here? They discovered that, look at this, they discovered that they don't mix color. If you see a painting of Rembrandt, the colors are mixed. You put one color, then another, and you have these shadows. You know, they are very dark, they are very impressive. But then, if you see the post-impressionist, there is light, there is life. They are very beautiful. You have to be careful to go to the right distance to see them. But then, what is the trick? They use one color and they don't mix color. Why, Beppe, why are you saying this? I finished to say that in the future, the quantum therapy will be precision therapy. If you have to give a red color, you give a red color. We have been doing light therapy for depression for years, but we use, you know, a mixture of light, then you go there, you take 1 hour of light, and then you get better. Imagine if instead of using this mixture, this admixture of frequency, you use a precise frequency that you know that modulate precisely the melanopsin, the rhodopsin, the FAD, and whatever it is. And so, in a sense, what they do is like this. And the painting does not exist. If you look very closely, you see there are only yellow, red, and this is Cézanne. Cézanne understood that the brain don't see is isolated object. The brain sees shadows, area, and whatever. And the genius of Van Gogh said, if you want to make people happy, you do this painting and you get people very depressed and meditative and suicide, then you get this painting. In a sense, what is behind this? Well, behind this is a lot of molecular biology and neuroscience. Neurons are related, you give the right stimuli, and the stimuli goes up, make map, and in 5 minutes I will stop talking, but I will talk 3 days. And Beppe, are you, well, when I teach 5, 6 hours no stop. That's my, I'm very used to that. And somebody knows very well. And now, what are you saying as any biological basis, or are you just, you know, being kind with this beautiful French or guest that we have? No, I'm not being very, you know, polite with this host that we have. Look at this. This is taste. Taste, you know, in your tongue there are only 6 kinds of receptor. You be precise. You know, this is sarà. These are your tongue is post-impressionist. Yeah. Take one, this is acid, this is sugar, this is whatever. But I understand 20,000 different tastes. How is it possible? Population coding, right again, population coding, post-Virchow, Virchow 2.0. Look at this. We have the first level of neurons, like that, you know, and there are spikes. You see those spikes. This is therapy. I want to start from there. You have a device that generates this spike. This spike combine, you see that? And the one, you get sodium, you know, some salt. And then, then, no, quinine, I don't like quinine. Every cell is delighted by one substance, and that is get crazy, you know? Like you met a wonderful woman, and you have you get crazy, absolutely crazy. And all the rest, you know, shadow around, no problem. But then they are combined, you see, And when they are combined, there are other neurons. If I collect this neuron with the level above this, then we have these neurons that are not specialized, but they learn a lot. And then what I get, I go up, and going up, you see, and you see this bar. This is the pattern. The excellent physician immediately understands this pattern. It doesn't look at each individual. Have you done CK on this patient has a myocardial infarction? I remember the student were, are you a magician? You know Sherlock Holmes. Watson said, are you a magician? No magic, no magic. They recognize the pattern, and there is a scientific basis, and they do like children, not like adults. A very experienced psychiatrist get an idea of the severity of prognosis of the patient using the non-declarative brain and not the declarative brain. Don't use DSM-5. Then if you need drug and you need, a teacher, whatever, bureaucracy or institution, then you go to consult DSM-5 and the classification of the medical book. But what he knows is a practical knowledge, is a very concrete knowledge, is something that they touch, they see, they smell the patient, and they understand what is going on. And at the end of the story, if I, and I am going to finish, 5 minutes, may I go 5 minutes? 4 minutes. 4 is divided by 2, which 5 is tricky, yes, because 4 is better. Then, to simplify, how many atoms do we have in a body? Well, 7, 8, not more than that, not all atoms. Forget the others. Then, what are you going to do? How many, when you buy this device to generate sound, light, vibration, magnetic field, is either very sophisticated? No. They must be quantum precise, but they are very simple. Look at that. This is the energy of the electrons in the orbits of hydrogen. Well, I won't be able to do that for a complicated atom, but and what happens? When an electron jumps from one orbit to another, and I stimulate you with a light, precise light, the electron jump, they emit photons, and what are the photons? Look at that. Look at that. What is that? This is the pattern. This is a pattern recognition. And does it stimulate one cell? Absolutely not. The first are the melanocortin that he was talking about, because melanocortin, MSA, melanocyte, but in your eyes, you have this nuclei of the hypothalamus, that is the center, and the cells there are specialized to interpret and to decode these, and then they send all over the world to your brain. So what is going on is that, and you see, you start from a very specific light. You see, like the post-impressionist, you don't mix color, just you know what you are doing, precisely, mathematically, and very, and then the division of color is built by the brain. We have 3 types of cell, 3 types of cone, and there's 3 types of cone. They don't, is an additive light, not subtractive, like it's not Rembrandt, is the French post-impressionist. They combine these and you see all the world. So if you combine the precise, elementary and mathematically precise stimuli, you can treat and modulate all function of the body. When will you start? 1 minute, I finish. What is the center of the center? The center of the center is the mitochondrion. Because the mitochondrion has 4 blocks, and I showed you this. You see, these are the pattern of the brain. You see, they are pattern. There is no classification. The brain doesn't understand DSM-5, doesn't understand the horizon, the classification. The brain classifies everything. And the next slide, look at this. Now, the neuroscientists know that there are some neurons that specialize in understanding, people, building, animal moving, insects. That's fascinating. I am talking about a classification of reality that is not based on human artificial language, not based on universal, but is based on experience. So when we talk about somatic therapy, all kind of exercise and whatever you learn at this level. The brain relearn to classify. This is why the third word was reprogramming your brain, reprogramming your body. And artificial intelligence does exactly that. Artificial intelligence has the level, see, this is a deep, why the word deep, what does it mean, deep learning? Deep learning means that the first level understand only individual color, is a post-impressionist painting. The second is going to combine them and say shadow, light, object. The third is complex object. And the third classify everything without the intervention of human being. But that's the classification on which you can base a very scientific therapy and prognosis and whatever. So I would start with the mitochondria. These are the giant of the mitochondria. And you see, why the mitochondria? Because the mitochondria is all quantistic. There are four major proteins, you see, and the first is a turbine. But this is a very simple pet. I taught it from Mitchell. Mitchell was absolute genius. And I thought, well, you know, electrons move from here, then go down here, they go down here, they go here, they go to the oxygen. But then fortunately they bring proton up there, and then here proton come down, and then the turbine is rotating and generating ATP. It's a very simplistic story. The true story is that electrons are moving in tunnels, so they are quantum tunnels all the way through. Protons are moving in protonic tunnels all the way through, and you can modulate this channel with very weak, precise mathematical therapy. And that's why I am against the Copenhagen, I am a deterministic like Feynman, etc. And I said, life is not order from disorder, like Boltzmann or whatever. In my opinion, life is order, grow on order. You have order all the way through. It's a different kind of order, and from order you build other order. And then I am, next week I will teach pain, chronic pain, and I am studying the development of movement in children, because if you have back pain, I think that you have to move like this on 4 legs for 3 weeks, very weak exercise, almost nothing, ridiculous. Well, Feldenkrais and some people write very close to what I am saying. And if you do psychotherapy, then you have to do very basic, children-like play and game, and reprogram everything in your body. Thank you for the attention, and that's it.